Today on Real Life, hear the fascinating story of how one man's trek on the Colorado Trail led him to an encounter with God and an unlikely rescue.
I'd been on the trail for about 13 days, or had walked about 200 miles. I was tired, I hadn't slept, and I threw my poles up in the air. I said, God, I need help.
Then follow along in God's Word as Pastor John Morgan concludes his series, The Greatest Stories Ever Told.
Being out of a job, I've had the same job for 40 years. I've always had a place to go, so you know that just terrified me thinking about being at home. And I thought to myself, well, if I have to get up every morning and just go walk to be busy, that's what I'll do, but I'm not going to sit in the house. It's probably about 5-10 minutes later, I just had this thought that came to my mind about hike the Colorado Trail next year. Now, up to that point, I'd never had a backpack on. I don't hike. I do hunt and fish, but I don't hike. I just knew I was supposed to do it. You know, there wasn't any audible voice or anything like that, but I knew deep inside I was supposed to do this. Originally, I had planned on starting my trip in June, and I was going to start 6 miles north of Leadville, Colorado, and I was going to walk to Durango, which would have been a 340-mile trip.
We had been planning for several months to go on vacation with my youngest son, his wife, and my 2 grandbabies. And we were going to Creede, Colorado, to a friend of mine's place and staying at his home. When we got there, we decided there was the first trail that we were going to take was about a 17-mile trail. And we decided we was going to do it on Monday. And the weather did not cooperate and looked like rain and stormy, so we decided, well, we'll just wait. So we waited until Wednesday. Wednesday morning, when everyone got up, I said, it's time to grab the rain gear. We're going on the trail today.
My backpack was wet, everything was wet, so I did not sleep good for 2 nights because my sleeping bag was wet, my clothes were wet, everything was wet, and it was cold. And I had to hike to Creede.
We grabbed our rain gear and took off and started going back down the trail, and got a ways on the trail and ran into someone that was coming down the trail, someone else that had been doing what we were doing. And they said, when you get to a certain place, be sure and take a turn and take another trail and go down there a little ways, because there's a mama moose and a baby moose, and it'll be something you'll want to see. And I said, oh, that'd be great. So that's exactly what we're going to do.
The trail itself was funneling the water down the hill, so my feet got soaking wet. And before long, I actually had water just squishing around in my shoes. And for anybody that knows anything about hiking, dry feet is your primary concern.
And so as soon as I topped the hill, my son was ahead of me. And there was a fork in the road. As soon as you went over the top, there's a fork of the road.
I'd had it. I knew my feet were getting messed up. I was jeopardizing the rest of the trip. I was tired, I hadn't slept. All these vehicles are going this way, no one's going my way, and I threw my poles up in the air. I said, God, I need help. I said, I can't go another step. I need a ride to Creede. And I said it loud. I hollered it. And of course, nobody was around. So I got my poles and I started walking. And then there was a fork in the road. I said, great. I don't know whether to go take the left fork or the right fork. So I hadn't gone 20 yards and a four-wheeler approached me, and I held my hand up asking the guy to stop, and he did, and I walked up to him and I said, can you tell me which fork in the road I need to take to Creed?
So when I came driving up, I noticed this guy was standing there talking to my son, and I didn't have any idea who it was, but I got off of off the mule and I start walking up.
There was a guy getting off a Kawasaki mule and walking toward us. And I didn't recognize him because he had sunglasses on. All I could really see him was a nose down. And I looked at him, I said, "Buddy?"
"Tracy? Is that you, Tracy Davis?" And he said, "Buddy Fortenberry." And so at that time we walked up and we hugged each other, and Tracy began to cry. And of course I had no idea at that point what was going on or what had been going on. I just know that I saw a friend from church up at a place that I had no earthly idea I'd ever run into.
I broke down crying. I said, it hadn't been 5 minutes. It hadn't been 20 yards that I cried out to God saying, I need help. So he loaded me up and they took me to the house that they were staying in, which was a magnificent place, and you know, took care of me and washed my clothes and fed me and gave me a place to stay that night.
We came back that night, and when we got back we realized we did have an extra steak in the sink. That was kind of unique since God knew we were going to run into Tracy, but we didn't, so that's why we had the extra steak. But we had steak that night. We didn't have pork and beans, we had steak. Had we missed 5 minutes either way, we would have missed Tracy because he would have taken the other trail at the fork. Had Tracy not been there, when we came over the hill, 5 minutes, 5 minutes difference in the time, we would have turned around and went back down. And so as we heard this, what had really taken place, that can only be explained by God meeting us on this mountain, we began to put the puzzle together and realize that this was not something that we could just take lightly, that there was a reason why God had allowed us the privilege of being a part of this.
I don't know what it all means. I don't know where it all goes. All I know is God gave me a story. God gave me these experiences. And I have no doubt in my mind that God told me on that trail, I get home and tell the story.
My eyes are more alert, looking for those opportunities that I might miss if I don't slow up and listen for God to give me a divine encounter.
My worship's not the same. You know, I used to go and sing the songs with not a whole lot of meaning. But now I just want to shout them out because God was there with me for 21 days and just continually took care of me.